So, Dr. Larsen, is it really true that you have taught for 51 years?
If I wasn't certain, every once in a while I hear from a student. She was Valerie Saspon. She's Valerie Saspon Sherline. She and Michael Sherline met in the 7th period class the first year that I was a teacher.
Okay.
They're still married. I mean, they have grandkids, great grandkids. So, and she just reminded me at Christmas time. She says, "You know, it's 51 years that I was at." Oh, good. Remind me. Yeah.
Yeah. You make me feel like a slouch. You know, I was at UT 41.
Okay.
But I think if I count my graduate student years, I think I had about 47. So
okay, because you were at Lake Forest, right?
Yeah, taught at Lake Forest a couple of years and then several years as a graduate student. But you make me feel kind of like a slouch that way. So how did you get to UT? What memories do you have about that? No, you were high school first,
I
right?
taught high school for 20
Yeah,
years,
yeah.
and I was getting tired.
In Long Island?
On Long Island,
Yeah,
same school.
Okay.
So I was getting a little tired of it, and I wasn't sure what, and there were a whole bunch of other things, life stuff going on. And so I had one of those NEH grants that I had gotten for the teachers. Yeah. And the professor said, "Why don't you go for a PhD?" So I sent out to 19 schools. 2 rejected me. UVA with the nastiest letter I ever got. I hate them.
We've all had rejection letters, Dr. Larsen.
But one broke my heart. A week after Notre Dame sent me, "We've got almost all your materials, so just send us." And then they, within days, I got the rejection from them.
Dang.
But 4 schools gave me the same amount of money.
Okay.
And it was Hawaii, Kansas, Purdue, and UT. Okay. So of course I called Hawaii, and the guy told me how much it was going to cost to live, and we said, he said, "You're not saying anything. It doesn't look good." I said, "Yeah, that's not going to happen." So then he asked what the other schools were, and he said, "Call UT first." Mm-hmm. And I called UT, and the first person I spoke to was Dinah Brock.
Dinah.
And she was so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got the used car sales approach from Mike LaFaro, who I didn't know that was maybe his first class as the grad director.
Yeah.
And then I spoke to you.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, "Oh, these people seem so nice." And I was just, it was really interesting. And I learned about your film classes.
Right.
So,
and that was your idea all along, right? To come specializing in film?
No, I know all about the big orange screw firsthand because they said, "Don't worry, we'll save spaces for the incoming grad students in whatever you want." Well, they didn't. So then I said, "Well, I've never taken it," because they didn't have film programs when I was an undergrad.
Right.
And so I said, "Damn it, I want to take a film class." And I took the film class, and everything changed. I mean, it was.
Yeah,
really,
I remember that class. All the people in it.
The 594 is 281 for graduate students, and the plan that was how a grad student might be plucked to be able to teach the thing. And so, and it was such a great class, and you had at least one other. That's where I met Paul Harrell.
Mm-hmm. That's right. He was an undergraduate then, taking it as a college senior.
As a college senior, right?
Yeah.
Chris Cagle, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it was really, and a lot of the people who were in the first class were in the second one.
I remember too, as I recall, you used to underline a lot.
Everything.
Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mary Papke once said, "I think the only thing that's important is what you don't underline."
Yeah.
So I was like, "Okay, Mary, yeah." And then it was interesting because it was like, "Okay, what do I do for a dissertation?" And the first thing you suggested, and I was so excited, was go over to the special collections and look at Clarence Brown's papers.
Yeah.
And they were such a disappointment. There wasn't enough there to really do much with. And then between you and Mary, and okay, I'll do adaptations of novels. And that's really kind of important in a lot of ways because I stumbled into the Wharton thing. There were only 2 articles that had ever been written, and Wharton claimed, if you remember, that she'd never been to a movie, and I was able to find out she'd been to movies.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, and then I through Mary got me into the Wharton Society, and then I met Scott Marshall, who wrote one of the articles, and he was fascinated. Oh, somebody wants to do something with Wharton and movies.
Yes.
And it was really, it was. I went out to California and I
Yeah.
got to see different.
Went through the production code
That was
administration
yeah,
papers,
for the old
right?
maid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the week that I worked in the Herrick Library, I was all by myself. And one day there was one other person there, but the other days by myself, and I was at the same table. And the last day I was there, I don't know why I didn't notice, I went to get up, and I looked, and I said, I know what that is. So I reached out, and I picked it up, and I said, God, it is heavy. It was an Oscar on the end of the table. And I'm like, because it's the Academy
Did you
Library.
take it? Or?
I picked it up. And the woman who I got to know, the librarian, she said, go ahead, hold it. So then she says, make a speech. It was such, and I
Too
said,
bad we didn't have cell phones then.
it was like, yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. But it was, and then in the middle, I don't know if you remember this, I'm writing the different chapters, and the first few came out, and then I got to the Age of Innocence one, because there were two films, but mostly it was the Scorsese film.
Right.
And the first version of that chapter was almost 3 times as long as the others. And I said, well, I can make them into 2. You said, no. One chapter about the same length as the others. And boy, that helped me so much.
Cut it down a
Because
little,
I don't know if you
yeah.
remember, from the first class
Yeah.
I was in with you,
Yeah.
I'm so wordy. And it's just like, no, pair your prose, pair your prose.
It's partly passion.
Yes.
Larsen, that's what it is.
So, yeah, but
yeah.
I was, and then the reason it's kind of important or telling is that's what happened. You get the PhD and you go, and I was on the market. The gold was a tenure track job.
Yeah.
But the thing was, to get a tenure track job, you've got to publish.
Yeah.
So, and it was, okay, if I work on fixing this to get it published, I can't spend as much time with teaching.
Your teaching
What's it going to
suffers,
be?
yeah,
So
yeah.
the heck with it,
Yeah.
And so I just said, no, I know
Yeah.
what, this is more,
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, that's what I've been.
Well, to me, it's a really nice coincidence that first course you took, or that 594 course that you took, had Paul Harrell in it, who then over time has come back and become a central person
Right.
in production at UT. So what a nice
Isn't it yeah.
juxtaposition right there. It came back around. And then even before you finished your dissertation, you were helping with 281.
Right, because I had the teaching experience, and because you were looking for somebody, the timing was just right.
Yeah.
Because then that would free you and Mary and Chris to be able
Yeah.
to do advanced things.
Right.
So the test case was doing the first semester was a fall semester with Mary,
Yeah.
and spring semester with you.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget the first lecture. It was on was it that 203, that big
Yeah,
room.
terrible place.
Terrible
to
place
show
with a
film
TV
classes.
set in the
Yeah.
front. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and the 16 millimeter projector.
Yeah.
And so I'm going along doing the first lecture she gave me. I think it was mise en scène week, and all of a sudden, I'm kind of trying to play to all the people, and all by herself in the back of the room is Mary, and Mary, and she just has that deadpan look.
Yeah.
And I absolutely froze, and she just nodded her head like, "Go on, it's okay."
Yeah.
And but that was it was. And then the first person that I got to teach it as the lead person with a grad student was Kesha McBride.
Oh, with Kesha.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I worked with Kesha, then I worked with Paul, her husband.
And then, just have become such a central cog in the cinema studies offerings at UT. So many students, I think, encountered you in 281, which is that sort of first, even in the minor, it was the first required course of cinema studies minors, and then of course with the major it's become important too. So
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I think fall of '93 is the first time I did the 281 by myself.
Yeah.
With Kesha.
Yeah.
And that was when I was taking two of the comps.
Yeah.
The first two, the two I passed.
Yeah.
And the night after the second comp, John Waters was here. And the film people, I remember,
Yeah.
and that was a fascinating, And I thought, gosh, if this is what's going to be like to be in this film program, I want to be part of
Let's
this.
keep going.
Yeah.
Let's keep going. And you did, huh? You
Yeah,
kept it going.
yeah.
One thing that I've been impressed with over the years is the way that you have mentored so many graduate students who have taught 281, and you've kind of helped them learn the ropes on that, because it really became pretty much your course for quite a long time.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was kind of like it's just teaching.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I liked, that I was given the chance, both you and Mary gave me some lectures to do.
Yeah.
So I wanted them to do some lectures, and you and Mary and Chris helped pick. This is probably somebody who'd be good. And I think one time we didn't have a grad student, and so we borrowed I want to say, I can't remember her first name. That says a lot. Her last name was McGee, like the McGee Larsen Library.
Yeah.
She wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And she wasn't from here, and she was a lecturer.
Right.
And she really didn't want to do it.
Right.
But oh my gosh, Walter. I can't remember Walter's
Squires.
last name. Walter Squires.
Yeah.
And then Allison.
Yeah.
Who I had.
Allison Carey.
Yeah. And then and Stephanie Metz and Kurt Rohde and
Ryan Woldruff.
Ryan Woldruff. And so, it was great. That's been, and I'm ending up with Lance, who I've worked with a few times, and watching him, he's really become quite, and it's fun to see them get, I remember you watch them the first lecture, and and then, they get, really,
Yeah. Well, one thing that I enjoyed really is once we had enough demand for 334, Film in American Culture, and we started teaching that regularly. Now, what would you say about the personas? I mean, teaching is partly performance, wouldn't you say?
Oh gosh, yeah, it is.
What's your persona, Dr. Larsen? When we teach together, I don't know if it's the same all the time, but
it's funny. I always saw myself as kind of the straight man. To
Well, you wouldn't let me tell jokes. How could that be?
I would set it up. Well, this is his only good joke.
I told a Steve Spurrier joke. Right?
And it was interesting how that joke changed over time with different coaches, different sports.
Gino Auriemma.
Yes.
Oh
gosh, but it was, it just was. It was a different kind of. I think that was part of what made it work.
Yeah.
That we were similar, but not.
To me, what was interesting is that we both had backgrounds in both literature and political science. Or we were both interested in films and also the relationship to American society. And that was something that we shared a lot. But our backgrounds, of course, were very, very different. You were urban, suburban, New York. I was Minnesota, kind of rural. And to me, that was really fun to play off against one another.
That, we would play off of that. It was really, I don't know, I thought it worked really well. And I first got to do Film in American Culture with you once I got the PhD. In the fall of '95.
Right.
And it's funny, people will ask, the question everybody will ask, I'm sure you've had the same one, what's your favorite film? What's your favorite class to teach?
Right.
And they're different.
Yeah.
And they're all, 281, that was my first one, so in a way I feel, but Film in American Culture is, like you said, it's what we studied, our background.
Right.
It was so much fun.
And what was a persona that you liked to play in 334?
It's interesting, when I first came here, within the first week I realized people noticed the accent. Gee, wow, what a surprise.
They still do, Dr. Larsen.
Oh yeah. And then I have a pretty good ear, so I thought about, okay, let's try to learn. Because one of the first things, I'll never forget, a student came up and he said, can I have that pin? And I said, I don't have a pin. And he grabbed my pen. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. So I knew how to pick up some of the things. And then I realized, no, I can use the persona.
Yeah.
So the persona became, that was the thing. It fit in with how I was going to be, Tony Soprano in a way, I guess, or
We always would have movies from set in New York in that class, including The Godfather. So you had to, and I would often make cracks about how mean and tough and so on New Yorkers are, and you kind of played into that. Too. But another thing that's interesting to me about you and your relationship with your students is that, like, I always thought you played a lot tougher than you really were to the students. Now, you didn't suffer fools. I don't think you've ever suffered fools.
No. But
Yeah.
when I was teaching high school, in the third year, I got to know that group. Two of them contacted you
Yeah.
and showed up here about 5 years ago.
It was some anniversary, wasn't it? Maybe.
I hadn't
yeah.
seen either one of them or anybody from that
Yeah.
class in 40 years.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they came.
Yeah.
But one of the people in that class, one day she came up to me and she said, I'll never forget it. She said, you know, you try to be steel on the outside, but inside you're just a marshmallow. And I said to her, I said, don't you ever let anybody know that. And when I came here, all I could think of was, that's the Southern woman look. Or the what is it? The steel magnolias.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's hard to get a balance. Sometimes
yeah.
students, you know, and sometimes, I mean, I must have had 15 semesters in a row where I had somebody in 365 cry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
and then you'd have to, like, find them and make them, you know, not be. You know, but trying to get that balance, because you want people to work, but at the same time you want them to know that you care.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's the other part. I mean, I've seen you reach out to students. You know, like if a student is clearly having some trouble or something like that, you reach out to them, send them an email, or try to talk to them after class and so on. You know, one thing that I've always felt is that you treat students as ends, not as a means to an end.
Right.
That
Yeah,
is,
that's a good,
you know their names, you find out about their backgrounds. You don't forget that. You know, you ask them how their career goals are going, and I think that means a lot to students. You know, in a big institution like UT, it can be so easy for students to feel like they're just that ID number. But if the person comes out and, you know, knows their name, talks to them, maybe to talk a little bit about didn't you have the students fill out student information sheets so you could learn something about them?
I used to do that, and they grew from an index card to 33 questions. And then a lot of the people just didn't want to fill them in or whatever, and so then I just didn't push it. So then I'd rely on talking to them, which actually in a way might have been better. I don't know.
Yeah.
But and every once in a while, because I'm a hoarder. Well, you've seen my office. And every once in a while, I'll find this. I was like, oh, here's a pile of. Oh my God, why have you saved these from, 1993? I mean, oh my gosh, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that's been the best thing about it. It's the people.
Yeah.
And connecting with people. And
Yeah.
it's one of the things, I think that's why we were able to interconnect, because we both had that same thing.
Yeah.
We're not just teaching material, we're teaching people.
Yeah, I've always felt that. I mean, teaching is easier if you like people and you like to meet new people, and it's really been a privilege, I think, over the years to be able to do that. Now, many of your students know that you always wear blue shirts, and what's that all about? I mean, can you tell us how that came about?
It's strange because it has to do with my eyes. My eyes are hazel, and I usually would wear green. And I found that if I wore green, my eyes looked more green, and people would notice that.
That's kind of Irish thing. That could have
that's
done
an
that.
Irish
Could have
thing,
gone that way.
And my mother said, "That's not good. That's not a good look. That's envy." And okay, Mom. And then, but the blue, I just like my eyes become very blue.
Yeah.
And I've always liked blue. I don't know why. It's just, and it's easy, just, which blue will I wear today?
Yeah, so that makes it a little easier in the morning.
Easier in the morning,
Well, you come in early, right? You come in early all the time. You were one of the first people on campus, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, a lot of times, although it's changed now with the pandemic, so our schedule is different. So
boy, that's what a way to go. I mean, my last semester, last fall.
Yeah.
One semester of pandemic teaching. There we go. What do you have any favorite memories of your time at UT?
Oh gosh, there's loads of them. Oh gosh, there's so many different things. I mean, I remember, and this is somebody we both knew, and I've lost contact with him. I don't know how to get in contact with him. Brandon Carroll was the first student that I had contact with who genuinely wanted. We didn't have the major then,
Right.
And I think we were just barely having the minor.
Minor, yeah.
And he wanted film.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to him and telling him, this isn't the place for you. And I didn't want to
Yeah.
lose him because he
Yeah.
was such a good
Yeah.
student. And so he applied to Florida State, and he didn't get in the transfer thing. And I remember meeting him, and he was so depressed, and it was great because I could tell him about my experience flunking my last comp, okay, for grad school. And I was like, oh, okay. And you just feel like, and I said, no, let's find out. And he was so good.
Yeah.
He went down. And
Yeah.
I'll never forget that. And he came back, and then he reapplied. They told him what things he ought to do, and he got in. And so, I mean, just, so that's one of the but there's so many things that you just,
Yeah.
and then one thing, and it was, this goes back to teaching high school. I always want the last day of a class was always really important to me because I realized that's kind of it. And in high school, you would see them again maybe the next couple of years, but here, the semester's over, that's usually it. And so I always wanted something, and for a while, I always wanted to sing. And then I never did. And then one time in 334, and I don't know why, what prompted me to do it. I was doing the lecture, and I know what it is. It's the Crumbling Week, and it's got the lyrics to "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning."
Yeah.
And I was at the podium, and I said to myself, Larsen, just do it. Suck it up, go get a drink, and do it. So I walked out, and the person in the front came to me after class and says, I thought you had lost it. You were talking to yourself. And I walked out, and I came in singing "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." And I was like, okay. And I did it a couple of times after that.
Yeah.
And I thought, it was, and then I wasn't, and I thought about, and I did it in the last semester, in Clarence Brown. And it was mostly because I thought, how the heck many times am I going to be on the stage in Clarence Brown? So what the heck?
That was really actually quite fun, being up on the stage
wasn't
at
it? Yeah.
Clarence Brown in the fall semester. One memory I have of teaching together, which I think helps encapsulate my thoughts about you, was I think it was my 50th birthday.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And you arranged to have Pat Summitt sign a basketball,
Yes.
and Joan Cronin,
Right.
the athletic director at UT, came down at the end of class and presented me this ball with Pat Summitt's, and that's still in my office at home with Pat Summitt's.
Because Pat, the original plan, and she was, and I had coached JV girls basketball.
Yeah.
And so, and I had gone to a clinic once with her, but she was on video at the clinic, so she wasn't even there. And I always wanted to go meet her, but I didn't have the guts to go meet her, and I didn't want that look. And so I told her a little about that, and I told her about you, and she said, "Oh, okay, yeah, he's one of our great fans." And then she had to go someplace, but she said, "Don't worry, it'll be there." And then I had no idea, and then Joan Cronin.
Yeah, I
came
mean,
in.
the athletic director.
Yeah.
But that really, I mean, it meant a lot to me, and I think it, for me, encapsulated the way that you care about people and think about people and so on. What's for Bill Larsen after you finish teaching? Have you thought about that much? Or?
Lots of people ask. I mean, in the summers, until I used to teach, and
I remember.
Yeah, and then this wise person said to me, "Don't teach in the summer. Just try it." And you were right. And then this wise person finally, I think it took about 6 years for you to
work
convince
on
me.
you a little bit. Yeah,
and then you said, "Why don't you try doing 3 classes instead of 4?"
Yeah.
Best thing that ever happened.
Yeah.
But when I didn't do then I would go up to New York for almost the whole summer. And when my sister sold the house and moved here, I had no place to go that first summer. And I was doing nothing. And I said, "God, is this what retirement's going to be like?" And my sister said to me, she says, "Well, you've always talked about writing the screenplay. Well, shut up and write it." So in the 9 weeks, I wrote the screenplay.
Yeah.
And so now, and it's been sitting because I've had teaching stuff. So now what I'll do is that's the first plan, is go back to it.
Yeah.
And then try to market it. I know where it's a Hallmark movie. There's no question.
Okay, well that's
so
good.
it's so it's and the one priest that was here, he's with the Paulists, and he worked for Jim Henson before he became a priest. So he had background with the movies, and so they promoted him from pastor and made him head of the media, and he had a movie made, and a Hallmark movie with Betty White.
Oh, good.
And so I was like, okay. So that's my hope, is I'll polish it, send it to him, and say, okay,
Another thing is you'll have more time to read. I can, just from the time that I've retired, you'll enjoy that too. But I'd actually like to get back to one thing that I think many of your students would remember, and that is your commentary on their papers and your color coding. And tell me a little bit about your philosophy about commenting on student papers, and also what's the color coding all about?
Well, originally everything was, what a surprise, everything was blue.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, there was so much blue and they couldn't tell one comment from another. And students would go, well, what is this about? Yeah. So then and that was actually more of a pain to do, because I developed a code. Okay,
Yeah.
pink is grammar and spelling. Red has to do with meaning. Orange has to do with writing things.
Yeah.
And so and it all comes out of I did it when I taught high school, but one of the things, and that's what students remembered, I wrote a hand note on the back of, they got report cards, a little piece of paper thing.
Yes.
Every
6 weeks or whatever. Yeah.
And so I would write a hand note to students on those. And then one semester, I don't know, something had come up or something, and I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Do you think they were like, well, wait a minute, what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
But so that always went with it, that they remembered that.
Right.
And then the other thing was, when I was here at UT,
Yeah.
Kurt Rohde and I were in the same class. We won't mention who the person was, and we both got our paper back, a seminar paper. So it's 25 to 30 pages.
Yeah.
We worked the whole semester on it, and we got a grade on it, and then one word comment. And there was not another sign that it had been touched.
That's so
and it was,
bad.
and after that, I said, "Oh God,
Yeah. But I think that's another thing that students appreciate, is knowing that the work that they're doing is being considered, and the teacher is attentive to it, and the teacher is interested in it, and the teacher wants to help you learn to think better and communicate better. And that's, to me, those extensive comments and even going to the bother of having different colors and so on, really makes them think about the importance of writing and how it involves different things. And in the screenwriting class, story is so important to you, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about, what's important about narrative, and what are your views on narrative, and why is it so important to you?
Well, it's from 281, we've got to do documentary, okay?
Yeah.
I've never been a big documentary fan.
Yeah.
Because unless the documentary has a storyline to it,
Yeah.
I don't know. From when I was a little kid, my biggest thrill was the first day I took a book out of the public library.
Yeah.
And I just came back the other day. I know the book.
Yeah.
It's one of the 6 Dr. Seuss books.
Oh, really?
I was so crushed. I was like, I don't remember that. It was
Yeah.
If I Ran the Zoo. And I was
Oh,
okay. And then I thought back about it, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, geez,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I've always been fascinated by stories.
Yeah.
And when I was little, when my brother was being born, I stayed with my mother's mother, and she had a couple of her kids who were still living at home, and they used to read to me, and I would tell them, no, that's not how the story goes.
Yeah.
And so there's something about story. And then when I got the class of the screenwriting class, everything that I was able to learn about it from people I talked to, from the things I read, it's all about story.
Yeah.
If there's no story there,
Yeah.
so and it's interesting because it's hard. One of the things I found is that the students, because you start out with trying to get them to think of story ideas, they come up with these story ideas that are mini-series.
Yeah.
Well, your project's only going to be 20 pages long.
Yeah.
You can't,
Yeah.
retell,
Yeah.
all of history kind
Yeah.
of thing. But it's been fascinating. I mean, the stories that I've gotten to read
Yeah.
are just, they're amazing. I mean, it's just,
Yeah. Another benefit of teaching, isn't it?
Yes, it
seeing
is.
people working to be creative and trying to draw on their own experience to tell stories too.
And
Yeah.
we know, the movies that we teach, we know them, we've seen them so
Yeah.
many times, and yet every once in a while a student will point something out and you'll be like, wow, I missed that. I never thought of that before.
Yeah, yeah. That might lead to one other thing that students who have taken you in history theory classes would probably remember, and that is your matching. And the specific detail of the matching on your exams. Now, talk about that a little bit. Nobody gets them all right, do they, or rarely?
Rarely. It's funny, the closest somebody came was, and she was in both 281 and 334. I forget which, there was one semester where football, not that it matters much here at UT, but if you remember, they canceled one day of classes or something with a game, midweek game.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
And so we had to do Kane, but we didn't have a discussion.
Yeah.
And so we offered the opportunity, and a few students, and this one, she came, there were 2 students,
Yeah.
and they just knew everything,
Yeah.
and they asked questions, and it was great. I think both of them had taken, whichever it was, they had taken the other class, so they knew the film.
Right.
But, yeah, so it's... yeah.
I was going to say it's another way of you kind of showing the students that you want them to work.
Right.
You want, to learn. You need to put some effort in, and yeah.
But again,
it's a challenge in some ways too, isn't it? Yeah.
See, the thing is, they don't read closely. That's something I got from Mary Papke, learning how to be a close reader and how important it was. And then between you and her, learning how important it is to do the same thing watching a movie.
Yeah.
And they don't, and we would give them study guides and they sort of look at it. We'd give them questions, some of them would. So then what happened was one or two students said, you know these movies.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, you're right.
It is true.
So then I started to come up with some more things about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and then what's evolved, and I just told them yesterday, and they were, and all the heads went down because they have their midterm in 281 on Monday, and the heads, and I said, I know why you're putting your heads down because you haven't looked at those. I said, I'm guaranteeing you, I made sure. After Lance made up the test, I said, send me the things, and I checked. Every one of them
was from that.
From that.
Oh, okay.
So now you can, so.
Okay.
But this way, just to get them to pay attention more.
Yeah. Well, two quotes I remember that you know a lot of times in your syllabus you'll give some quotes out to students about the subject matter. 2 that sort of stick in my mind is that Joan Didion quote.
Oh, right.
Isn't it? We tell ourselves stories in order to live.
That's it.
Okay, that's one thing. That's one thing I remember about the importance of story and narrative to you, which I think is tied up with your relationship with students, with the people that you meet. And the other one is that D.W. Griffith quotation about or maybe it's a Conrad quote about our task is to make you see.
Right.
Something to that effect.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that we want you to value and appreciate this art and to pay close attention to it because it's a great art form. And it's for me it's been so much fun teaching with you because we share that passion and enthusiasm for film. And after you retire, the other thing we'll have to do is continue going to movies.
Going to movies.
If they'll ever let us back in the theaters.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah.
This whole for everybody.
Yeah, I
this
mean,
year has been
teaching
just so crazy.
film. The last semester of teaching film with no movies in the theaters. It's kind of depressing in some ways.
There's a student. She's going to graduate, and she was in 334 and 281, but neither time when I taught with you.
Yeah.
She loves Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
So when we did 334,
yeah.
We didn't we did team teacher, but we didn't we didn't do Iron Man.
Right.
So that's why I said let's do Iron Man last
Yeah.
semester,
Yeah.
and then we can't show it
Yeah.
because
I know. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed all that time teaching film with you, and I look forward to spending some more time thinking and talking about movies in the future too.
And hopefully there'll be better men's basketball. The women
Yeah.
are getting there.
They're getting there.
They're close.
They're working on it.
And better men's and better no football. That's all right.
I'm going to worry about that.
So I guess one of the big things is you don't seem like you care what people think of you. Like that, I admire that about you. But you seem like you care for a lot of people, and I feel like that's a very juxtaposition almost. And how do you feel about, like, you've been through so many students, and you've made connections with so many of them. How does that, like, how do you see that?
It's strange when I write letters of recommendation and watching over time that I've been a teacher for so long, and I've taught so many students, and now it's like, I don't know, maybe over 10,000. I don't know how many, but little things. Every once in a while, something will happen. One day, I was in the elevator at McClung Tower, and a UPS delivery guy got on. And I looked at his name tag, and it said, Carol. So I said, is that your last name? He says, no, it's my first name. I looked at him, and I said, are you Carol Carmen? Now, this is maybe I've been here about almost 20 years. He was in the first class I taught, and the first year that I was here as a grad student. And he was like, oh my, so I said, I want to show you something. I brought him in. I still have the printout from that first class on the, I don't know. Like I said, I hoard everything. But it's amazing. People are just great. And it's funny, my sister will say, yeah, but you're a teacher. And you're always tired of these people. Because I'll tell people, I'm not a people person. But I'm not, but in the class, it's different in the classroom. I can't explain it. I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who likes to go to parties. I hate to go to places where I don't know anybody, because I just don't. Let me just hide in the back and just kind of. But there's something about in being in the, I don't know, just meeting people and it's and they all have great stories. It's amazing how many of them have such great stories. So that's been part of the thing. It's like, yeah. So.
And then, so a lot of people want to be, like, well-known and successful, and they feel like a lot of people struggle to, I know so many of my friends that are like, I just want to be successful, I just want to be well-known, like, that's their goal in life. But I feel like you've done that just by, and they feel like they have to give up something. Like, they have to work on something that they just don't want to do. And I feel like you're doing exactly what you want to do. You're happy doing it, and you have a legacy now at UT. Like, everyone knows you. Even if people haven't taken you, they know who you are. And, like, just, do you think, like, following your happiness, your passions, do you think that's, like, led you to having that legacy?
Probably, but it's so accidental. I didn't want to be a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher. I was going to go to law school. But by the time I was finishing up as a senior, as an undergrad, I had taken overloads most semesters. And so I just took the teaching classes so I could stay there for one more semester. And I was just burnt out. And so that's why I didn't want to go right to law school. And it was the student teaching experience I had at the Andrew Jackson was the John Marshall School. Andrew Jackson was the high school where they went in South Bend. And 105 students, and it changed my life. I mean, I was just like, it was a K through 8 program, and no one wanted to take it because the person was teaching social studies, but also PE. So you had to do elementary school PE. Well, the director of the program was begging because they'd been waiting to get, this is a school where the wealthiest people in South Bend and a lot of the people who, or the faculty at Notre Dame, their kids. And so they finally got a spot in there, and a person lasted one day and quit, football player. And John Gasser, I shouldn't say that, but anyway, that was his name. And so I said, all right, I'll do it. And it changed everything. And then, but I had applied in Indiana, Illinois, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York. I got a job on the Friday before Labor Day. And schools in New York open on Wednesday after Labor Day. So I was like, okay, let's see how this works. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else. But you do have to give something up. Hey, I would have liked to have made money. And as a teacher, you do. And the ironic thing is, I was making more money teaching high school with just a master's degree than I'm still making here with a PhD as a lecturer. And I have the PhD now. And at one point when I couldn't get a tenure track job, one of the professors said, why don't you go back to teaching high school? And, but this is different. I have to say the difference, and I love teaching high school, but I love teaching college. It's just, I don't know, maybe the fact that you don't get attached to people for 2 or 3 years is part of it that makes it easier. So that people come in and they go out, but but you kind of bump into them and you have some contact and things. But I can't imagine doing anything else. I mean, that's but I'm not going. Some people have said, oh, you could teach. They have adult ed programs and things. There's something a really good one through Oak Ridge. No, this is it. It's over. So when I close the door. Then it's time to do something else. I'm not sure what it'll be. Hopefully connected to writing, and we'll see. Maybe I'll become no, I'm not going to become I hate fishing, so that's out.
Yeah. So why do you think I'm making a documentary about you?
Because you needed to make a documentary about somebody, and you couldn't think of anybody else.
Why do you think I picked you specifically, though?
I don't know for sure, but I have to tell you, it was a surprise. I felt it made me feel good. Oh, this is not good. Gotta keep the stone face here. Got an image to keep up, the tough New Yorker. It made me, I felt really good about it. And the interesting thing is, in the time from when you first proposed this, I have heard from people that I haven't heard from in years, and it's interesting to reconnect. And that's every once in a while. I'm not on Facebook, never have been on Facebook. So there's this fan club, and I can't be. I don't know anything about it. I can't get on it because I choose not to. I don't like to be. I'm very private, and but people find you. You can't hide anymore in this crazy world that we're in now with the internet. And so people, will reach out and try to, like there's one guy, there were 2 twin brothers, and I think they graduated high school in 1980. And I taught their cousin, and I taught them, and then I taught their younger sister. Right after they graduated from high school, and one of the 2 twins died. It was very sad. And out of the clear blue, in this time period, and he wants to talk to me on the phone. I don't talk on the phone. I do not. I hate the telephone. Don't talk on the phone. And so I owe him an email explanation. Look, I'll exchange emails with you. We'll text, but I won't. Because I don't want to stay on the phone. After 5 minutes, I start walking around the room. I hate it. I didn't get a cell phone till not all that long ago, and because my sister yelled at me, she says, "I'm not going to come and pick you up at the airport if you don't have a cell phone," because I was yelling and screaming at her because I waited for like an hour and a half. Well, she got caught in traffic. It was New York, so I was like, okay, so I got a cell phone. So but It's really it's great. I'm so grateful.
And then, what's one thing? I mean, I'm sure you've learned a lot, but what's the main thing you take away from just this experience as a lecturer and teaching for so long?
Oh gosh. I should be able to see if I'd known the questions in advance, I could have, I mean, I am
gonna
the,
hit you with
no, I've got, I mean, who knows more quotes than I do? I mean, you've been in my class, so I mean, the people who've been in my class, they know, oh my God, every sheet's got 9,000 quotes on it. People are great, and it's interesting. The thing that made this experience so good for me, and my sister's commented about the same thing. She moved here 2.5 years ago, and she said, people have asked her, does she like, and she's right on the money. It's what teaching at UT was like. It was very similar to when I first was teaching at Uniondale High School, the kinds of people that I taught, the people that I met, how they responded to me, how I responded to them, and the same thing happened here. I mean, people are just really nice, and it almost makes you, in a way, I'm glad she sold the house that we grew up in, and so we don't have that to go up there to, because I mean, New Yorkers are not nice. They can be they can be wonderful. There's that image, but it's just not. It's different here. It's people have been. I mean, people will. I'll never forget that when I first came here, people would stop and they would say, "Hi, how are you?" And they didn't just walk away. They wanted an answer, and I was like, "What the heck? I mean, what is this? This is not, And so, and it was, or somebody, would hold the door for you or something, and I was like, do you want a tip or something? It's that New Yorker. And it took a while to say, holy smoke, this is pretty neat. This is pretty real here, and it's been nice watching the film program grow from just a minor to and one of the people that I just heard from, and I think Dr. Mayland had told me that he had just heard from also, Ben Murphy. And I'll remember the 2 years that Dr. Mayland was working so hard to get the majors set up. Ben Murphy, every day, he would hound is it ready yet? Is it ready yet? Yeah, and he's gone on to great things since then. And so it's and he's got a job with Cameron. He's in New Zealand, working on Avatar 10, 12, and 15, I guess, so he'll be there forever. But, so that's, I mean, just touching base with neat people. I mean, last night watching the Lady Vols, one of the people was Courtney Lyle. She was in 3 of my film classes, including screenwriting. And, so it's just kind of neat to see, people,
Is there anything that you want to add? Anything?
Figure out what you think you want or would like to do and go after it. Don't second guess. When I was in undergrad, the last composition class, they asked us to write about what do you want to do now that you're at the end of your freshman year. And I knew what I wanted to do. And it was to be a sports broadcaster. That's what I'd always wanted to do. And the neighbors used to go nuts. He talks to himself. He's broadcasting games, and there's nobody, what's he doing? And but I never went after it. And I was at a place where there were opportunities, and I never went after it. And it's like, it's something, it's kind of, it sits there. And so if you think about something that you'd like to go after it. You got, Ben Murphy's older brother, Scott, told me when he was an undergrad here, he was a little older, I said, what do you want to do? And he said, I want to make a movie, a feature-length movie by the time I'm 25, so I can do what Orson Welles did. And by the time he was 25, he made a feature film. Dr. Mayland and I we were in this auditorium watching the movie. And it's just, and he's out in California. I mean, now he's probably out of work out there, but right now, but I mean, so that's so if you have dreams, go after them.